The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, seeing a good friend in person, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and probably not role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Lizard Wizard from Forbidden Games. Then the Dukes take a look back at their review of Renature in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're joining us for episode 271, Reagents of Change. Reagents of Change. Do I need to say a third time, or just the two is sufficient?
2 is sufficient.
Okay, I just want to be sufficient. Don't want it to be anything more than sufficient. So that name title is from Phil Speck. We're talking about Renature, which has some sort of eco-friendly theme that I barely remember. Slight spoiler for the double take. And then also there are reagents, alchemical, magical ingredients in Lizard Wizard, which will be our featured review. So good job, Phil. I like that title a lot. We actually get help naming all of our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild, which is guild number 2008. You should definitely go check that out because we ask for help naming the episodes. We ask for input about the various games we're talking about throughout the episode. So definitely check that out. And then we've got some runners up for naming the episode that we'll have at the very end of the episode. Alex, in 1 week, you and I will be in the same city. Whoa.
This specific city, the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri.
Have you ever been here before?
I have never been to St. Louis.
Okay.
Not once, not twice, but a total of 0 times.
Okay. So, the broad rundown, Sean.
Yeah.
Excellent barbecue.
I can't
But
wait.
a surprisingly diverse food scene outside of that.
Nah, I don't care about that so much.
An amazing set of parks, including a really cool and free art museum and zoo. Culture. Of course, the Arch, which you will have a view of from your lovely downtown St. Louis hotel.
Yes. Made sure of it.
And plenty of performance venues. We'll be at one of them seeing the Ben Folds concert.
Yeah, very excited for that. Alex, are there any hotels in New Mexico where you have to ensure that you get a particular room to see a particular site? I cannot think of any.
Here's the thing. It's very situational, but timing-wise, if you had one during Balloon Fiesta,
yeah, okay.
You'd want to have one that looks to the north, broadly, I think, for most of the hotels around there.
Sure. Unless you're at Sandia Casino, then you want one looking west.
Yes, this is correct.
Okay, great. I'm glad we laid that out for everyone. That's very helpful. No, I'm very excited. I'm very excited. I'm very nervous because several years ago, Raquel kind of understood that she's not a great traveler in any way, shape, or form. So much so that the last couple actual conventions I went to before the pandemic and various things, they were in Phoenix, and I took Mariah with me instead. And it was much smoother sailing. So Raquel's very much aware, but she's excited. She is half packed right now, a week out. But
that's pretty early.
It's going to all change at like 3:00 in the morning before our flight leaves. It's going to be a wild time, but I'm very excited. We'll have a nice flight out, and I'll read, and I'll be good. And then we may or may not see you that Friday night, but we'll definitely get some barbecue after the hotel. The hotel has a beautiful pool. I think it's like on the top floor, so that'll be nice. We're looking forward to that. It'll be fun.
I hope the weather's warm enough for that. It should be.
No, it's indoor, I believe.
Oh, well, that's good. That's even better.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, there's some good spots in downtown St. Louis. It's not where, say, there are some good restaurants, but I think the best restaurants are sort of sprinkled throughout the rest of the city.
Right.
but not a bad place to be, especially, again, view of the arch and all that fun stuff. Yeah, you're in a good spot.
So I really want to go to Miniature Market while I'm there, though.
Okay. Now, here's the thing.
I just want to see it. I've bought so much stuff from them online. I just want to see Miniature Market.
We can make this happen. You are staying approximately a half hour away. Maybe a little bit less than that, but it's on the opposite side of town from where you have your hotel.
Okay. All right.
It's doable. It's not that bad, but it's a
Yeah.
hike. This is not some easy little walk to it side trip.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited about this too. I'm excited to have you in town, excited to show you around, and excited for you to have some mind-blowing barbecue and also see one of your favorite artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably my favorite artist. So
Say for me.
What? Who?
Me, your favorite artist.
You are not my favorite artist. For Alex, you are my favorite podcast co-host.
Oh, okay.
But that's as far as like permanent co-host. You know what I mean?
Would you say what we do is art, Sean?
I'm not comfortable making that declaration in any way, shape, or form.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. Well, Sean, speaking of trips,
yes.
Part of good segue. Part of last week, and at this point, almost a full 2 weeks ago, I was heading out to go to a cabin in the woods. Brought to you by my good buddy Kyle Wahardo and his group from Pittsburgh. There were folks from other spots, from Michigan and other spots, but it was primarily folks from his Pittsburgh game group. Got a cabin about an hour southeast of Columbus. He invited me out there. It was my first trip since Ruby's been born. And, headed on out. And, Sean, you want to talk about a stressful situation. You mentioned not being a good traveler. I am maybe overconfident sometimes in my travel abilities.
Sure.
Because as I'm coming up to the St. Louis airport, I said, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to park in the fancy terminal parking. I'm not going to park in one of these off airport lots. I'm going to park in the good spot.
Treat yourself.
I get there, and oops, that lot's full. So I go to the next best surface lot. It's called Super Park A. Super Park A is walking distance from Terminal 1, which St. Louis has two terminals not really connected to each other very well. You have to take a shuttle between them. And one of them has Southwest, and one of them has everything but Southwest. I'm next to the terminal that has everything but Southwest, but I'm flying out on Southwest. I park my car, feeling nice and casual, nice and loose, get a shuttle over, I've got pre-check, everything's fine. I see like 30 people waiting at the station to get shuttled over to Terminal 2. You can walk to the other one. You cannot walk to the Southwest one. And there's people on their phones calling dispatch, and some of them had been waiting there 20, 25, 30 minutes.
Yikes.
Without the shuttle to take them to Terminal 2 showing up. Sean, I jump into an Uber to get from the parking lot outside of Terminal 1 to head over to Terminal 2. This piece of the story is important at the end of this. I'm going to tell this in two parts, Sean. But this specific piece, Super Park A...
You're like bookending your story.
Yes.
All right.
But remember that. Super Park A already had a bad experience, with shuttles, and had to get an Uber to get over to my flight in time. I made it. Was fine. Got to Columbus. Amazing scene. This is kind of like the Gamers Ranch, but not a place that's custom made for games. It's just a really nice giant house in the middle of the woods, tree house. I didn't do a ton of outdoor activities. The most I did was hang out in a hot tub for like 3 hours one of the nights out in the snow. Amazing experience. Game-wise, I played our review game, was all set up, ready to go, and I just, as soon as I got there, jumped in. I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But also played Dune Imperium's expansion, Ix, the Ix expansion.
Rise of Ix, I think it's called.
Have you played that yet, Sean?
No, I own it, but we have yet to play it.
I think this is a very worthy expansion. So a big key to what this expansion adds is it adds a shipping track and it adds a tech track. And I won't dive too deep into this because I'm talking about a ton of games through this, but basically you have another action that you can use to manipulate shipping track, move it up, and you basically get a shipping action is either move up a step and don't get anything, or move down all the steps you've accumulated so far. So I could move up a step and then next action move down a step, or I could move up a step, then next action move up another step, and then cash it all in with another step. Gets you access to some cool things. There's also, though, the key to this, Sean, are tech tiles. These tech tiles that show up and allow you to get cool abilities, one-off abilities, endgame scoring, other things that you can invest workers in or outright pay using spice to get. So it adds a whole new layer to the economy. Really cool game. Again, one of my favorites. It's a 6. It remains a 6, and this expansion is quite scrumptious. So played a very nice 4-player game of this. Love Dune Imperium. Love Rise of Ix. Worth grabbing both. The other one we played, maybe less worthy, was a game called Zoom in Barcelona. Sean, have you heard of Zoom in Barcelona?
I have not. Is it nothing to do with Vicky Cristina Barcelona?
No, unfortunately.
Okay.
I haven't seen Vicky.
Didn't know if it was like a movie tie-in or anything, but no, go on.
No, it is a game about photography in Barcelona, which thematically I was into. You have a bunch of landmarks around Barcelona that you're trying to go around and snap pictures of. And also you're trying to improve your camera by doing lighting tests to make you eligible to score other photos as the game goes on. You have cards that you can use to move around, or you can just kind of run your little person. There are photos of landmarks you can take, but there's one less of each landmark than the number of players. So there's a bit of a race to try and get to as many of those landmarks as you can. The trick with this game is it didn't feel particularly well balanced. If one person takes all 10 landmarks, they're probably going to win. Their base scoring is so high that it makes it tough to win. I don't know if I'd recommend it. It looked cool. I loved it thematically, but gameplay-wise, it didn't quite click. So those are some of the early plays. And Sean, again, hot tub. I'm there. I'm settling in. Friday night. Life is good. That's part 1 of my Cabin in the Woods story. Over to you, sir, to talk about a game.
I'm a little nervous for you right now.
You should be very nervous for me.
So, I mean, is it not to spoil anything, but is it a spooky situation?
No.
Oh, okay. So there's not like an appearance by Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins. They're not involved.
No, nothing resembling anything that happened in the movie The Cabin in the Woods occurs during the rest of this trip.
I've seen that movie like a dozen times. I love it so much.
I have seen it 0 times.
Oh, it's really good. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun
I'm
movie.
not a horror fan.
It subverts expectations, and it pokes fun at the various horror tropes. All right, we're not a horror movie podcast. We're a board game podcast. Well, I'm excited to hear what's going to happen next, Alex, even though it's not horror related in any way, shape, or form.
No.
All right, I'm going to talk about, let's see here, Bear Raid. Not Air Raid, which is apparently what it's supposed to kind of be a play on. No, Bear Raid. This is a 2022 stock market game from Board Game Tables, designed by Ryan Courtney. And I played this 5 players. I believe it plays up to 6. Yeah, it plays 3 to 6 players. And this is a stock market game where you are buying shares of stocks. Shocker. You're also shorting stocks, where basically you are kind of taking out loans that you'll need to pay back at the end of the game. And so, of course, if that's the case, you're hoping that these short stocks that you're taking loans on, that their value is going to go down, the share price is going to go down, so that you can pay back a lesser amount. And of course, you're hoping that the shares of the stocks that you actually purchase, that share price is going to go up. So there are, I believe it's a different company, or one company for each player, and then there's a track where it shows the different share prices, and then each company has the current possible stock forecast, and then next turn's potential stock forecast. And so basically it's saying, okay, if a certain condition is met for this stock at the end of the round, then its share price is going to go up, or its share price is going to go down, or it's going to stay the same, or it's going to go up like a crazy amount or down a crazy amount, whatever. I'll explain what determines that in a second. So basically, this game is played over, I think it's 6 or 7 rounds. I think it's 7 rounds, and you're going to get 2 actions per round, and it's sort of a snake style where the last player to act is going to go again, and then it's going to go in reverse order. And your options are to either buy a share or buy some number of shares, short stocks, or there's some dice manipulation actions that you get. So you can, each company may have a certain amount of dice out by it. You can take those dice behind your screen as one action. Alternatively, you can place up to 3 dice that are behind your screen out onto this little tablet area where those dice are guaranteed to be rolled. So this is what I was talking about when I said there's something that will determine what happens to the particular share price. And basically it is what is the sum of the particular colored dice matching that company, and where does it go on that particular futures card. Okay, so at the end of a round, you're going to draw out 15 dice from this bag. You're going to, so they're colors matching the different companies. You're going to roll them and then put them next to the corresponding companies, and that's what figures out what happens to the share value that round. So that's why I said before, when you're taking all of the dice from a particular company, or you're guaranteeing that a certain colors of dice are going to be rolled, that's where there's this certain manipulation that's very interesting to do. So for example, let's say that I have invested heavily in the Red Corporation and I wanted stock prices to go up. Well, I see that the current card says if the value of the pips on the dice, and these are all D6s, by the way, if they are 4 or less, it's going to go up $15. That's basically 3 bumps. That sounds fantastic. I totally want that to happen. But if they're 5 or 6, it's only going to go up $10. If it's 7 to 8, it's only going to go up $5, and so on. So I say, okay, I'm going to take all of the dice. So now it's showing 0 on it. At the end of the round, I can only keep 5 dice that I've stolen behind my screen. The rest I have to put back in the bag. So there's some amount of control, and you're kind of hoping, okay, maybe I took 6 dice, and I'm going to keep 5 of the reds back here, so it's less likely reds are going to get drawn, but I'm still putting 1 red in, so maybe it might come out, and there's some other reds in there as well. This was really dry. This was a really dry stock game that we played with Nick, Rachel, and Dan, and then Matt. This was Matt's game. Nick, Rachel, and Dan were not particularly crazy about this game. Matt and I like this game quite a bit. I thought this was a fantastic stock company manipulation game. Really interesting stuff. Very different than a lot of other stock games that we played. It's fairly quick, fairly light, but there's some really strong manipulation that you can do here. I don't think you'd be crazy about it. I don't think you'd hate it, but I don't think you'd be crazy about it.
It doesn't sound like a thing that would be something I'd gravitate towards. It sounds like something I'd play, but not.
Yeah, it was definitely on the drier side. And for Nick, Rachel, and Dan, just not their style of game. Matt and I, we both really enjoyed it. So I'm very eager to play that again. So that is Bear Raid. Alex, Cabin in the Woods, Part 2.
Cabin in the Woods Part 2, and I might do this in 3 parts, Sean, just based on content. So other things that happened that first day that I forgot, we did a whiskey tasting run by Kyle. That was pretty cool. He kind of taught us how to, or bourbon, whiskey, one of those two. I think it was bourbon. Anyway, bourbon tasting. It was very good. Enjoyed it. Also, there was a board game White Elephant exchange where one guy brought a bunch of first editions of games but had them all wrapped up because he had replaced them with second editions of said games. And so you would open them, and then you could, much like White Elephant, choose to steal from someone else or open up another one. And it was kind of cool seeing how this group of hobby gamers all valued different things that came out of this. Someone got, not Caverna, what's the, Agricola. Someone got a copy of Agricola out of this White Elephant exchange. So there were some heavy-duty games getting moved around. It was cool with the wheeling and dealing. I came away with The King is Dead by Pierre Sylvester, which I've heard decent things about, heard a lot
Yeah.
about, but haven't actually tried, played any of that. It's sitting at home. I have the Osprey games, I think first edition of that. Other games I played, Sean, my favorite of the con was Nidavellir. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. Nidavellir. This is a game where you are trying to recruit dwarves. Sean, I think you'd find this game really fascinating. So you have these coins that you're going to use to bid on dwarves. Every round you're going to get a dwarf, but you're bidding for position order, and you set the bid ahead of time. So you have 5 tokens always. 3 of them will get used in slots. 2 of them are going to be in the bottom as tokens that get combined. It's a coin crafting game. So I might start off with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I might say, 0, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 0 is the one that lets you combine. So let's say there's a round I just don't care about. I might put that in slot 1, and I'll put my 4 and my 5 in the bottom slots, and then the 2 and 3 I'll use to bid on the other 2 to try and get a little bit better in order. When that 0 pops up, I'll take the 4 and 5, turn in the 5, and get a 9 to replace it. So I now have a better token to use to bid with as the game goes on. There's a little bit of market manipulation where if 9, let's say I was going to trade for a 9 and 9s weren't there, I upgrade to the next highest level, not lowest, highest. So I would go up to a 10 or an 11 or a 12 if all of that bank is cleared out. The dwarves themselves, once you get a complete set of I think 5 unique dwarves, you can claim a superpowered dwarf. The dwarves score in different ways. One of them scores based on sort of a multiplied. So if I have 4 dwarves times, say, 8, I'll score 32 points. Another one is, how many of these banners do you have of dwarves? Another one is, do you have the most of this banner? If so, you get a bunch of points. They score in different ways, but again, it's that coin crafting system at the center of it, and this bid, draft, and go from there. Not a crazy complex game. It's got a 2.14 weight rating on BGG. Adds a little more with the expansion. I think you'd really dig this one, Sean. This was a gem. This was a real gem that Kyle showed me. It doesn't play that long, about 45 minutes or so. Can get more complex, but doesn't have to be. So that's Nidavellir. Other game I played was Mind MGMT, which you would not like, Sean. This is a hidden movement game.
Nope.
Based in the world of the graphic novel. Very confusing. Really stylish. Looks really cool. I did not fully grok this game for reasons that I will tell in part 3 of the Cabin in the Woods story.
Oh my goodness, you were just creating so much tension.
So much tension.
I can't handle it, Alex.
It all turns into like the last chapter of Fiasco in this next one. So anyway.
So, oh my goodness. Okay, Nidavellir is actually pronounced Nidavellir.
Oh, all right.
I'm listening to a thing on YouTube. Nidavellir is not pronounced that. Nidavellir.
Okay.
Nidavellir. Vedlish. Okay. Hey,
anyway,
we're both a little rough on our ancient Norse, I guess.
What did you play, Sean? What have you been up to other than Bear Raid?
Yeah, I played Art Decko. Art Decko, spelled Decko, because it's a bit of a deck building game. I played this with Eugene. This was actually we just played it 2 players, and you have a starter deck. And your starter deck is going to have some cards that have some buying power, and also some random art cards that you're going to start with. There are 5 different types of art. There is, let me see if I can find it. I just had it here, and now it's gone. There it is. Art Nouveau, Pop Art, Renaissance, Surrealism, and Impressionism. And they have different artists that provide the various art for the different styles, including our friend Quanchai Moria. But now I'm blanking on which art style he did. But anyway, looks great. All of the art looks great. I think it's fantastic. And so on your turn, you are taking 2 actions from a couple different available ones. One available action is to haggle. This is where you discard a card from your hand to draw 2 new cards. You can acquire. This is where you pay the cost of a card that's out in sort of the they're in different galleries. And so you could do acquire, but if you do 2 acquires in the same turn, you have to buy cards from different galleries. You can't buy from the same gallery. And basically there's a certain number of cards in each gallery, and it depends on where that gallery is on the board. And the price of cards is ever increasing. So there are these little chits that you have where once a gallery sells out, you refill it, but then you take away the little chit that says how much those pieces of art are, and then there's a next number up that falls in. So it changes quite a bit. What's interesting though is whenever you are acquiring art, you then increase the value of the art. So there's a value track, and certain galleries will increase the art by greater factors. And because what happens eventually is you can also choose to discard art cards, not just the money cards, but you can discard art cards for their value to make other purchases. But early on, your Art Nouveau painting might only be worth $1 or $2, but then later on in the game, it might be worth $6-7. That adds up. But again, I'm telling you that that there's increasing costs throughout the game as well. So you're kind of trying to scale with that. Now, early game, you can buy additional money cards. Some of these money cards have these additional effects on them, but they're like high values of money. But towards the end of the game, if you've got like a $5 card, well, my certain paintings I have are worth, 6 or 7. So it's not that great. One of the things, the other actions is to exhibit. This is where you take a card from your hand and then you exhibit it in one of the exhibition galleries. So not one of the purchase galleries, but one of the exhibition galleries. And those cost a lot to do. So you have to pay like, I don't know, I think the cheapest one was like 11 and the most expensive was somewhere around 15. And there's certain, if you're the first to do this, you can get some sort of bonus. Also certain exhibition galleries are looking for certain types of cards or certain types of art rather. And so you kind of have to watch that. And then in addition, as long as there is a sufficient number of cards in each exhibition gallery at the end of the game, it's going to turn on some sort of end game scoring. So you're trying to manipulate that as well. You're going to keep playing until a couple different things. I think the thing that probably happens the most is when there's a certain number of cards that have been exhibited or art that's been exhibited. I think if you go through the art deck, that might also end it. And then at the end of the game, you're going to score points. And by the way, every time you exhibit cards, you're scoring points on the score track as well. The more money you're paying for the more expensive exhibition galleries, the more points you're going to get. But then at the end of the game, you're going to get points for your deck. Basically, how valuable are certain pieces of art that you've acquired and so on. I liked this. I think it was good. I don't think it was great. I would certainly play this again. There were a lot of interesting choices with sort of the manipulation. There were times when I was like, oh, great. Look at, this Art Nouveau card is the Art Nouveau itself is going up in value quite a bit. And I have an opportunity to get some cheap Art Nouveau cards. I'm going to add that to my deck. But then you also have to decide, well, wait, do I need to thin this out of my deck at this point? Because I'd really like to exhibit at this particular gallery, but then I'm losing some value from my deck, but I'm making some of it up just from the exhibition points that get awarded. I think it was decent. I think you'd like this, Alex. I don't have any desire to own this. I'd probably get a couple more plays out of this and be like, yeah, that's good. That's fine. I'm probably good. But I think it's worth checking out. I think it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're like an art aficionado. It might be a little bit more interesting for you. Not necessarily my thing, but I think it's worth checking out.
It sounds conceptually cool. It sounds like something I'd like to try at least.
There's enough different here from some other deck builders that make it really interesting. And again, like I said, worth checking out. So, and that's Art Decko. I didn't say it's, by the way, it's designed by Dade Wu and published by Rio Grande Games.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, Sean.
All right.
Everything goes to heck. So starting Saturday, it had been a late night. I was up in the hot tub. I was up until 3:30 a.m. that first night of the con. And so I slept in. I was a little slow to start, played a couple games. And then by the evening, I just started feeling really off.
Uh-oh.
Like really chilly. Could not get warm.
Uh-oh.
I sat by a fire, a roaring fire. That didn't do the trick. So I went up and I took a hot shower. And I stayed in that hot shower for like 20 minutes. Got out, laid down. That wasn't enough. Had to get back in the shower again. I came down with something nasty. Here's what I know. I know it wasn't COVID because I took a test and subsequent tests, and it wasn't that.
Yeah.
But what it was bad. I was just, again, too cold, couldn't get warm. The folks there could not have been lovelier. They tucked me into bed, quite literally, made a homemade chicken soup from ingredients they had on hand there.
The staff?
No. There's no, they're not staff, fellow gamers.
Okay.
There was no staff. Not a thing. But no, fellow gamers who were there took expert care of me. It was a rough night, Sean. I threw up at like 3 a.m. I couldn't keep food very well down. And I was starting to recover by Sunday. I had a flight out that Sunday evening from Columbus direct back to St. Louis. At about 11 a.m., Southwest cancels the flight.
Ooh.
Anecdotally, what I heard happened was daylight saving time messed up their crew timing, and so the crew they had scheduled ended up timing out and wouldn't be able to do the flight.
Okay.
So I'm already feeling miserable. The flight gets canceled. I get rebooked, not on a direct flight, but on a flight leaving a couple of hours later out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
That flight, both of those flights get delayed. I land 12:15, 3 or 4 hours later than originally intended. And again, having just had a fever dream, throw up, cold kind of night. I'm recovering, but I'm still not keeping food down that well. It's not a good time. Flight's canceled. I'm on longer flights. I just want to get home.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, Sean, I've flown into the terminal that isn't walking distance from my car.
Oh, it's all coming back.
It's all coming back. I call the number. Superpark says, yeah, there's a shuttle pulling up right now. And wouldn't you know it, Sean, they were correct. There was a shuttle that was pulling up right then and there. Amazing. It's a terminal-to-terminal shuttle and a Superpark A shuttle. I get on, along with maybe 4 or 5 other people, and the driver of that shuttle, seeing a bunch of folks waiting, says, hey, anyone need lots B, C, or D? B, C, or D. I typically park in Superpark C. I get from an altruistic standpoint, any other time I would have been stoked, like, yeah, absolutely, fill it up, let's fill every available seat, totally fine. Here's what I didn't know was about to happen. The shuttle goes from Terminal 2 to Terminal 1. It makes that trip to the next terminal over. And then instead of going to Superpark A, where it was originally supposed to go, it goes from that terminal to the farthest lot out, Superpark D next. And then Superpark C, where I would have parked on a normal occasion. And then Superpark B. And then Superpark A. What should have been a 5-minute shuttle was a 30-minute shuttle.
Oh.
All because of one fateful decision to park at the wrong parking lot at the St. Louis airport. Awful.
Wow.
I got home way too late. The whole rest of the week was kind of recovering. Abby and her sister, who was in town helping kind of take care of Ruby, they both had food poisoning while I was gone, or possibly the same thing that I had. It was a bad week. It was a rough week on those fronts. But this specific trip, which they had gotten there, the bulk of the group had gotten there on that Thursday. I get in late, and then half of it, I'm sick. And so I didn't get nearly as many plays as I probably would have typically. And it just, it was not a warm re-entry into the world of traveling post-baby.
Yeah.
So that's my Cabin in the Woods experience. Organizers did a phenomenal job. It was a beautiful setting. It was everyone could not have been nicer. I made some good friends. I sent the folks who took care of me a puzzle, a really nice high-end puzzle for their for their puzzle nights. Cannot complain about the people one bit, but it was a rough experience because of a couple of those things that were just,
Yikes.
Anyway, yep. So, moral of the story, don't park in Super Park A, Sean.
Never treat yourself.
No. But anyway, that's my Cabin in the Woods story and a couple of Sean's plays. After the break, our review of Lizard Wizard. Well, Sean, the Game Toppers 3.0 Kickstarter is in the books, and thanks to a whole bunch of backers, Game Toppers had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign, more than $800,000 raised to get more Game Toppers, new features, all sorts of fun stuff headed folks' way.
Wait, did you say 800,000?
I did say that amount. Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's a ton of money.
Sean, did you make it in time? Are you part of that group?
It's over? It's over? Like over?
No, it's done. I'm sorry you missed your window. But the good news, Sean, is that if you keep an eye on the Game Toppers LLC website, the late pledge manager should be open in the near future. Take a look there, and you can still get in on all the fun, get the newest features, get yourself a Watson, or get yourself, I don't know, whatever you want. Awesome game mats, rails, something cool to really take your gaming experience to the next level without getting a fully dedicated gaming table, which is exactly what Game Toppers is all about. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com, because if it ain't a showstopper, it ain't a Game Topper. From the creators of Raccoon Tycoon comes another game that rhymes, Lizard Wizard, an economic game that transports you into the magical world of lizards that need homes, tower homes. Can you get them in the right home with the right spell at the right time? Or is this a spell that's sure to be more of a curse? We'll tell you.
All right, so Lizard Wizard, and first off, Alex, that was not one of your best. I'm sorry. I'm gonna heap on praise when it's deserved, and it very often is deserved. Oh,
Sean, when I was first thinking of this, I literally thought of this intro 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And I was trying to have in mind other animals that rhymed that could be future games in this series, from the folks who brought you Raccoon Tycoon and Ren Taxmen. Like, I don't know.
If you want to criticize my rules overview, I'm fine with that. You do what you got to do.
Sean, I don't pay close enough attention to your rules overview to critique it.
Yeah, I know. So, Alex, I guess I'm going to take some exception here. You're saying this is an economic game? No, there's no economics here, Alex. It's your powerful lizard wizards acquiring like mana for spells and there's no economic game here, Alex. Come on, man.
Oh, my apologies.
All right, so Lizard Wizards, a 2021 game designed by Glenn Drover, art by Jacoby O'Connor and Angie Stegg, and this is published by Forbidden Games. Ooh. Okay, this takes place in Astoria. Astoria is a land pulsing with magic and intrigue. Nothing about economy there, Alex. Magic and intrigue. All right? A handful of archmages are vying for the loyalty of wizards across the land so that they can wield ultimate power. In Lizard Wizard, players compete to recruit wizards from 7 unique schools of magic, build mystical towers, research powerful spells, summon helpful familiars, and search dark dungeons for gold and items of power. Only one archmage will rise above the rest and control the land. Alex, will it be you?
Well, Sean.
Yeah.
In my plays of this, it was me.
Oh, good for you. So happy for you.
No, I'm a pretty good archmage, it turns out.
So yeah, this is an action selection game that's also a tableau building game. There's a bunch of different supply cards. So you have these wizards of the different schools of magic that are going to be auctioned off with the main currency of the game, which is it called mana? Is it called mana?
Mana, there's mana and there's gold.
Yeah. But mana is like the main currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, mana.
Okay, so you've got wizards. You also have towers, and the towers are also, they match the various schools, and they can be purchased either with some amount of gold or some amount of the 7 different reagents, which is another kind of currency in the game. These different ingredients like mandrake and eye of newt, kind of classic wizard, witch, warlock fare. You also have familiars, and familiars can give you a couple different options when you purchase them. Again, those are typically purchased with mana, and the price of these familiars becomes more expensive as the game goes on. And then the fourth main supply deck is the spells. And the spells might have some sort of ongoing effect, some sort of one-time use, or possibly some endgame scoring. And they require you to pay a certain amount of mana. I think it's always 5 mana to learn the spell, but then you have to usually pay some amount of reagents to cast the spell, make the spell active. Now, there are some other decks. There's also a dungeon deck, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then there's also a reagent deck. But the 4 supply decks are really important because when any one of those decks, you run through them, you're going to complete the round, and then that's going to be the end of the game. So what are you trying to do here? You are trying to build a tableau so that you are hopefully putting a wizard in a tower. Because if you could put a wizard inside of a tower, that's going to be worth 5 points. Now, hopefully, you are able to match a wizard to its type of tower, at which case it's no longer worth 5 points, it's now worth 10 points. And then if you can take a spell that also matches, by the way, a spell that you've successfully cast, and it matches, then it's going to be worth an extra, was it 5 points?
Yeah. If you have a matched pair of wizard and tower, any spell in that school from now on is a bonus 5 points.
Exactly. Correct. So basically, it's 1 wizard per tower, but then any number of matching spells for that particular pair. There is also going to be scoring for any of the endgame spells that you've managed to cast. There's also a majority points, first and second place, for who has gathered the most treasure from the dungeon. And then additionally, if you have wizards that don't match up with towers, they're worth a point each. Okay, great. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to, it's basically a kind of set collection, tableau building, etc. So you're going to go around the table during the course of the game, and you're going to take one of 6 available actions. You can, as action 1, gather reagents. So at the start of the game, you're going to have 3 cards, and at the top of each card, it's going to say, get these 3 or 4 reagents from the supply. But then it's also going to, at the bottom, say, okay, although you gathered those, we're now going to increase the value of reagents, because there's this little board that has a reagent on a track. And as you are collecting reagents, other reagents will be going up in value. Also at this point, if you've already acquired certain wizards are going to give you a bonus reagent whenever you're doing the gather reagents action. The second action, you can convert reagents to mana. So you can select one and just one type of reagent. You can sell as many of them as you want, and you're going to get the current value on that little tracker in mana. You're going to get that, discard the reagents, but then for each reagent of that type you sold, it's going to take the value down 1 tick each. Option 3, you can recruit a wizard, but this is actually an auction. So you say, okay, there's these 2 wizards that are up for grabs. There's a deck of wizards, but then there's 2 that are available. And you say, all right, I'm going to put this particular wizard up for auction. I'm going to bid 3, and then it goes around. You can pass, but if you pass, you're out. And then it's just a, it's fairly normal auction of whoever bids the most after multiple attempts is going to get it. The interesting thing here is if you initiated the auction, or excuse me, the recruit wizard action, but you didn't win, you can immediately take another action. It could be another recruit wizard, or it could be something else. All right. The fourth thing is where you research a spell. There are 4 available spells to choose from. You pay the mana, and then you can either immediately cast it if you have the necessary reagents. You can also cast it at a later time, I believe after you've gathered reagents, or also as part of a familiar action, which I'll describe in a second. The 5th action is to create a tower. Now, there's only 1 tower available in the display at a time, and they range from 1 gold to 2 gold to 3 gold, or one reagent of a type, 2 reagents of a kind, 3 reagents of a kind. And so then you'll go ahead and take that. The interesting thing is that for each tower you have, your maximum capacity to hold reagents is increased by 1. I believe it starts at 11. It's 11 or 12, or maybe it's 10. Maybe it's 10. I think it's 10. I'm just making up numbers. I think it's 10. All right. And then the 6th and final action is to summon a familiar. Now, the familiars, again, they're going to cost you mana. And again, they're increasing amounts as the game goes by. But you basically have 4 actions when you choose a familiar. You can either get 2 gold for each card in your tableau, including the familiar, because the familiars match up with the different schools of magic. You get 2 gold for each for each card in your tableau that matches that particular school. You can also gather reagents of whatever's shown on that particular familiar, and these are going to be like multiples of a particular reagent. Usually it's 1, I believe. You can also clear the spell offer, so you can wipe all 4 spell cards, deal out 4 new ones, and then buy one of them for free. And then finally, the last option is to delve into the dungeon. So this dungeon is a bit of a push your luck mini game. And in the dungeon, there's a bunch of treasure. Some of that treasure is worth gold, but then there's also monsters. And so what you're able to do is you're able to say, okay, I'm going to flip cards over until I either stop or until I hit 2 monsters. And if you hit 2 monsters, you've pushed your luck too much, you don't get anything. But if you stop, you're going to collect all the treasure. And again, remember, there's a majority scoring for treasure at the end of the game. And again, some of the treasure might be worth gold. Additionally, it's kind of interesting. There are some spell cards that give you extra bonuses if you're able to encounter certain types of monsters in the dungeon. Now, what's really interesting here is if you collect the treasure, great, you keep those are out of the treasure deck. But when you encounter monsters and you bust, all of the monsters get shuffled back into the dungeon deck. So essentially the dungeon gets harder and harder as the game goes on. So those are your 6 available actions. And you're going to keep playing until, again, one of those supply decks runs out. And then once that happens, you finish the round, add up all the points that everyone has, and whoever has the most points is the greatest wizard the greatest lizard wizard in all of Astoria. I apologize for that mistake. That's all I got, Alex.
Sean.
Yeah.
This is a rare rules explanation, and we will talk about this shortly in rules, where I have discovered that, and this didn't significantly affect experience, but have been played with all plays, 2 rules not correct. 1 setup rule and 1 action rule. We'll talk about it.
Okay. All right. Alex, what were your expectations for Lizard Wizard?
I had heard good things about Raccoon Tycoon.
Same.
From a few years ago, that hey, it may look cute, but there's there's a nice game under the hood here. And so I had similar expectations for Lizard Wizard, not knowing how similar or different it was. My only other first impression was Abby scooped this up from Miniature Market for me. Her new work is pretty close to Miniature Market, and she brought it home and said, "That's an ugly box cover." That was effectively her only comment. I don't know if I fully agree, but she didn't like the look of it. So, those are the basic impressions. generally positive, expected a meatier game than the name or theme might indicate, and a questionable box cover in the opinion of my wife.
Yeah, I too had heard a lot of great things about Raccoon Tycoon, and for whatever reason, we never quite got it to the table. It's something that I think, angling to get to the table for a while, because I heard it was like a nice little light economic game. I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds good. I will say that Raccoon Tycoon, that name, sounds way more clever than Lizard Wizard. Like Raccoon Tycoon, I'm like, all right, cool. That's clever. Lizard Wizard, I'm like, really? Okay, that's a dumb name.
It's kind of the same thing, though.
It is, but it's just, I mean, maybe it's like, I don't know. Lizard Wizard's just like, it just sounds ridiculous. Whereas Raccoon Tycoon, you're like, oh, I could see that. Yeah, I could see that.
If the word rhymed with mage, do you think that would have had a different? I can't think of an animal that makes sense for that. But if you had mage, would that have come across better? Is wizard just too basic?
I suppose. I don't know. It just, there's something about the way it sounds, the way it looks. Raccoon Tycoon just sounded clever. Lizard Wizard just sounds basic.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it sounded interesting. You know, you've got auctions, great. I love auctions. You've got variable market prices, awesome, terrific. Like, I knew it was going to be a fairly pasted on theme, but that doesn't matter to me all that much. So I would say expectations that were looking up.
Okay. Rulebook. Sean, did you learn this game from the rulebook?
I did not. I watched Dan King's Rule Schools video for this.
Dan King, the Game Boy Geek?
Dan King, the Game Boy Geek.
Go watch his new review of Azul Queen's Garden, now live on his channel. I watched that and then texted him asking, hey, is this one that is a worthy Azul? He says, yeah, probably. If you like the third one the most. So anyway, all right. So you learned from the master himself, Dan King.
Yeah. What about you?
I would have been better off if that were the case. Instead, I learned from someone who was kind enough to bring the copy and have it all set up. And literally, I walked in the door and played this my first time, and was taught this. Unfortunately, taught wrong in a couple of ways.
Okay.
So for one, although the tower deck was properly seated, right? You start with low value towers and increase. The familiar deck was not. So we ran into, you had familiars for all the games I played that were all over the map. Some were 5, some were 25, some were whatever else.
Oh,
it's in
no.
the rulebook. Yeah.
The tower deck was supposed to be seated in ascending order?
Yes.
Oops. We did that correctly with familiars. So we just did the opposite?
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, it's written the same way in the rulebook.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I missed that during setup.
Well, that's pretty fun.
Whoopsie.
So the other one is Recruit Wizard. For whatever reason, this was taught as it's an auction, but it's a 1-round auction no matter what.
It is a 1-round auction if you're playing 2 players.
Right. I think that's where the confusion occurred. We were not playing with 2 players. We were playing with 4 or maybe 5. I don't remember exactly, but more than 2. And so we did and I think it made the wizard economy a little bit weird because it was sort of, people would kind of jump on the bid. We did it correctly where you get another action if you don't win the auction. We did that properly. But that auction was treated as if it's 1 round. It is not 1 round. I will ask you a question, Sean, which I think is indicative of this rulebook a little bit.
Yeah.
Converting reagents to mana.
Mm-hmm.
If the market is 5, let's say the value of Buckeyes / Eyes of Newt is 5, can I sell 7 of those at a time at that price?
That's my understanding. My understanding is you sell them at that value and then they fall.
I was taught a little bit differently, and I would say the rulebook is confusing. Even
it is
rereading
confusing.
It now.
Yes.
Because what it says is, even if the value is 1, you can always sell at 1. No problem. It doesn't reduce the value on the reagent tracks. So that would seem to imply that even if you can't move it down, more than the amount, right? Because if I sell 7 of them when the value's 5, it should in theory go to -2. The board doesn't have a spot for that. It doesn't even have a spot for 0, which is fine because the rule is you can always sell for 1. But because you're supposed to move it by 1 for each unit it moves down, do you sell at the value, but then when it bottoms out, you only sell for 1? I don't know. This might be gamer overthinking, but I think there are just little areas like that that aren't as crisp or completely clear as they could be. If that makes sense.
And I agree. And in fact, I took a couple pictures. And in fact, this is why I watched Dan's video, was because I don't own the game. I don't have it here. I didn't have it in advance to read the rules. And so I wanted to make sure I was able to teach it to a group of people once I pulled up to Empire. But yeah, I found some odd things. Let's see. So in the setup, it says in the reagents, oh shoot, where is it? Basically, it says each player takes 2 unique reagents to start.
Yes.
And so does that mean, that either means one of 2 things. One player gets reagent AA, the next player gets reagent BB, the next player gets reagent CC, or you just take 2 different reagents, 2 reagents that are unique. I'm almost certain, and the way Dan taught it, it's the former. And that's the one that makes more sense. But it was still like, well, that's not entirely clear.
Here's the thing, though. There are 7. Yeah, there's 7 Well, I don't know.
I think it's 7.
There's 7 reagents. Game
Right.
plays up to 6.
Yeah.
Each player selects 2 unique reagent tokens. I had that as unique from each other. So 2
Correct.
different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you say each player takes 2 reagents. No player may choose the same reagents as another player.
But my interpretation is different from that.
Oh.
Each player takes 2 unique reagent tokens, as in 2 reagent tokens that are unique from each other. In other words, I take 2 different reagents. I take an Eye of Newt and this. You might also take an Eye of Newt and something else. It's such a small thing in the grand scheme of things.
Well, yeah. So the other weird thing is that, so talking about the differences in the auction for a 2-player game, it says in the rule book, solo / 2-player bidding, when players in a 2-player game, blah, 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 blah. There is no solo game that I'm aware of. I don't know if the expansion adds a solo, but at first I was like, oh, there's a solo variant. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try the solo variant. And I kept looking in the rule book. I couldn't find a solo variant. There's no solo variant, right?
There's something that says solo play in the rule book right after setup.
Was there?
Yeah, it's in an odd spot, but it's basically right after setup, right before game rounds.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there is.
So, Sean, I'll add something else that's interesting as a terminology. If something refers to scoring a familiar, there's a spell that says you can now score additional familiars or additional points for familiars or additional for familiars. Familiars themselves, under the rules of the game, unless you have a specific card for them, do not themselves score in endgame scoring as you would traditionally understand score.
Correct.
But what that is actually referring to is, on the summon familiar, one of the 4 actions is scoring. If you receive gold per type of card, that is called scoring, which sort of makes sense because gold converts directly to VP at the end of the game. But as most folks would traditionally understand scoring, I tend to think of that as final scoring, as the end of the game scoring, as what I'm scoring as that happens, not as an ongoing action. That was confusing to a table and a play. So there's a lot of instances of odd or not completely ironed out or confusing terminology. By and large, you can learn how to play this game from the rulebook, but there's going to be some weird little spots that aren't as clean cut as you'd like them to be.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, rulebook, I would say, is a negative to an extent. Art and components, Sean. I think it's a mixed bag here too.
Well, and let's be clear. We both played with the retail copy, not the Kickstarter edition.
Yes, correct.
Okay, proceed.
So the art on the cards tremendous.
Yeah.
I really like the look of these cards. The lizards themselves were really evocative, had cool names. I like that they had, if you stack the wizards, you could see what are these additional resources I'm supposed to be gathering. That all makes a good amount of sense. The mana is of different shapes, or not different shapes, different sizes.
Yeah,
you can
barely.
differentiate between them. Barely, but they're at least different. The gold is not different. 1s, 5s, and 10s all are the same. Size and general look. Not great. Not a good thing. The cards themselves are large, which I think allows them to have good art and have a lot of table presence. It takes up a good amount of space. I don't know if you quite needed it to be as beefy as it was, but whatever. I will say on the positive of this, though, Sean, it did have a really nice game organizer, game trays built into it. So this was a well-organized game and well thought out from that standpoint. The coins and some of those other little things were a little bit odd to me, but generally more success than failure. Just some little off kinds of things. What about you? Any additional thoughts there?
Yeah. So yeah, the 4 main supply decks are oversized cards. I thought it was a bit much. I didn't think it was really all that necessary, and I feel like this game took up way too much table space for what it was. Additionally, if you are unable to cast your spells right away, you kind of have to keep them in your hand or face down. It would have been nice if those were the same size as the reagent cards, which were already kind of a hand for you. So not a huge deal. I agree with you for the most part. I think the art was nice. I would have liked different wizards within each school. So within each school, each wizard is the same name and same art. And I get it. The price of commissioning art is expensive. I don't know. I think that would have added something to it. But yeah, I agree. I think more positive than negative. But while it took up a lot of table space and while the art on the cards was nice, I didn't think it was particularly an impressive looking table presence.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that broadly. Again, though, I think it does more right than wrong. The unique shapes on the tokens, for instance, for the reagents. I think that works well. It's not. Is it the most premium resource token thing I've ever seen? No, but for a retail copy, I think they did a pretty good job as a whole. So, all right, that's art and components. But of course, the big key to this one, and the one I'm very curious about with you, Sean, gameplay.
Yeah. 2 words, hyphenated. I think hyphenated. Yeah. Mind numbing. Mind numbing, Alex. Mind.
In a good way?
No. What?
Oh, interesting.
Alex, I did not like this game.
Oh no. The midweight Euro curse strikes again.
It's not really a Euro. It's an economic, it's a light economic game. It was just tedious. I mean, everything about this game just felt tedious. Collecting like when you do gather reagents, collecting the reagents and then adjusting the reagents, having a weird push your luck thrown into the middle of it. I thought the auctions weren't particularly dynamic, and there was some significant gaming of the auctions that was possible. I did not, I really disliked this game. I disliked it quite a bit. And even, so I played with Matt too. And again, in a type of game that might be in his wheelhouse, he wasn't feeling it. I mean, it was just like, we were all trying to make like a good faith effort to play this through, but we were more than happy when this ended. And there were, like I said, there were ways to game the wizard auction, like not in a good way, I think.
Sean.
Yeah.
And this is rare these days for the Dukes of Dice. This used to be more common in the very early days of the show. I am on a very different page from you with this one. A very different page. There are a lot of interesting levers to pull in this. And to go back to the early days of the show, Sean, there were elements of this that reminded me of Splendor.
Okay.
Here is how. Here's how. As the game goes on, you get more efficient at building an engine of gathering reagents and gathering stuff as you recruit more wizards to your crew. There are other things that can get you more efficiencies. You might get more efficient at going through the dungeon. You might get more efficient at gaining familiars. You might get more efficient at all sorts of things. At some point, you need to flip the switch and run the engine, whether that be getting the towers to house folks, whether that be going through the dungeon and actually getting stuff there, whether that be pushing hard for an achievement. You need to turn and flip the switch and do that. And it's a game where you can, because the turns are so quick and efficient, in a lot of cases, not every case. I agree with you in part on something.
Yeah.
But because they're quick and efficient, it can be easy to lose track and just have fun. I gathered 10 things. I sold for 80. I gathered this. I sold for 70. I got a whole bunch of mana. And then not actually flip the switch to use the mana for anything super cool or interesting. So where I agree with you in part is that the gather reagents step is very fiddly.
Sure.
Because I'm gathering the 3 that I want on the card, plus however many wizards I have, plus moving all the markets. It is a bit of a chore. The rest of it is pretty breezy. I pay a coin for this tower. I put this wizard up for auction. We go through the auction. We're done. I buy this spell. I recruit this familiar and then do this cool thing with it. Now, sometimes, especially in early plays of this, you're going to have a hard time knowing really what's out there. Spell-wise, what's good? What could potentially hurt me? One area that I think the game did that was really successful is the spell deck has some amount of take that baked into it.
Yeah.
Or I can steal a bunch of your gold, or I can steal a wizard, or I can burn down your tower. But there's little stars on them, and if you want to play a kinder version of this, remove everything with a star, and all of a sudden you have more of a true Euro. No take that to it. Just be most efficient with your engine. I played my first game of this, Sean. I didn't go in I went in the dungeon once, and that was it. I didn't focus efforts there. I didn't do anything. Someone built up. They had protection from 3 different kinds of dungeon critters. They went hard and heavy on the dungeon, and it didn't work out too well. On my other play, I went pretty heavily into the dungeon, partly through luck, partly through other factors, but was able to build up a nice cohort of wizards, towers, and combos there. And I enjoyed that set collection element. I enjoyed that battle over what are they going to do? Are they pushing towards this achievement? Do I need to cut them off at the pass? For the game groups I played it with, more success than failure. I will agree that I would not want to play this at more than 4. The game technically plays up to 6.
Yeah.
No way. Way too long. I guess there's something baked into it where it could, because the decks are finite, it could be fine. I would be pretty hesitant about it just on the surface.
And let me say real quick, so I did forget to mention the rules. Yeah, there's also these 4 unique achievements that get shuffled around every game. And it's a race. It's a race to get, be the first to 10 gold, be the first to have 6 towers or whatever. And they're worth, I think 5 points each, 10 points, 10 points each, I think. Yeah, and I played at 5, and I think there's an element where you kind of want a higher player count in a lot of economic games because of the auction, things like that. But then it was also kind of I don't think it was quite as snappy as your experience. And I played with a bunch of experienced gamers. Like, it's not that it's not like there was a ton of AP or anything. I just think with certain types of actions, save the tower. Maybe the tower is the really quick one, but there is a little bit of fiddliness, it seems, with everybody, with every other action. Yeah. This
Okay.
was just it was just not enjoyable, and I really wanted to enjoy this game. I had high expectations, and I didn't feel like any of the synergies that you could build were interesting enough. Like, I get it. I get what's happening. I get what's going on. I get what they're trying to do. And I mean, I think there's, I don't know. I would play Splendor. Like, Splendor is just streamlined. Splendor is great. Splendor is brilliant. Here there was just a couple too many things muddying the waters for me, for my taste.
I found myself feeling clever, on the other hand. With a familiar, for instance, they're pretty versatile critters. And using them to just beat someone out to the achievement who'd been trying to get to that achievement through mining or through stealing coins from someone else, or a spell cast at the right time. There are, if you know where to look, satisfying, interesting opportunities you can find in the game.
Sure.
And multiple ways to accomplish things. I don't know. There were certainly turns where people paused and thought a lot, and the game can bog down as a result of that. But by and large, I found the decisions interesting and found some of the synergies to work really well. I had a spell that allowed me to convert, when I was selling reagents for mana, to convert other reagents into that one type I was trying to sell at a 2-to-1 rate. And so I could take advantage of a hyperinflated market on, say, toadstools and make bank as far as mana. And anytime you can do, if I can take one action to get 60 mana as opposed to 3 or 4, that's a pretty cool efficiency that I've uncovered in the game. So, I don't know. It clicked well with my brain. It didn't feel as tedious or as much of a slog as it might have for you. I think some of this might be the crowd you were playing with too, though, Sean.
Maybe. I don't know. I think one of the issues was the auction too. I think the way you played the auction is more interesting, and maybe that helped your perception. I think the actual way you play the auction, which is sort of a pretty typical auction style, where you just, like, once you pass, you're out, but then it keeps going round and round until everybody passes, and that works for a lot of games. But I felt like this needed a different auction style. I even thought, I'm like, well, maybe like if this were just one bid and you're done. But if that's the case, then the person who initiates the auction goes last, right? Like there's a benefit
instead of first.
Exactly. Then there's a benefit for choosing that as your action. Like in a lot of ways, there's not a huge benefit to choosing that as your action, because somebody else is getting basically a quote unquote free action
yes,
off turn, right? So it's like, well, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to do that, especially if I'm going first. But then again, it goes round and round. I think that would be much more interesting. Even another method, the way container is played, right? So if you put up the auction for this wizard, everyone bids, and I think it keeps going. But then you, as the person who put the wizard up for auction, you have a choice. Either that player pays you the amount that they bid, or you say, you know what? I'm going to pay you that amount instead. So I just felt like this was Glenn Drover saying, I want an auction, and then stopping it there. Not really looking at what might work better, what would be more interesting. Like, I just cannot get around the fact that if you put up something for auction in this game, it's kind of a bad move. Because at least one person's getting kind of a free action. And I think that you're inherently better doing almost any other action. But then it comes to a point of like, well, so then what? No one puts wizards up for auction? Like, I just feel like there's not, unless you're looking around and you exactly know the mana situation. But even then, you could have a situation, especially in a lower player count game, where you have two people that are out of mana or so low on mana that you could have the other two players just kind of going back and forth and buying a bunch of wizards for super cheap. And yeah, shame on those people for letting that happen, but that just doesn't seem like a good design.
It played pretty well at 3 that way. And I did like that you could kind of rope-a-dope. I don't want this wizard. I'm going to put this wizard up for auction that I think you might want. And while it's a free action, I might get you to spend out of mana so I can get the one I really want. Right. And I don't have to worry about you competing with me for it. So I found there was interesting strategy in there. Again, not with the rule that's in the rule book, with that 1-round auction.
Yeah. Like I said,
but I get what you're saying.
I think that's better if the person initiating goes last. I think that would be a much better game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. That system's not perfect, and there's some fiddliness in the game. And I think ultimately it just left a different taste in my mouth. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, think of that what you will.
We've had this discussion about this particular saying. Something leaves a bad taste in your mouth. There's not like variable tastes that get left in your mouth. You're like, that left a good taste in my mouth. And I'm like, that doesn't work that way, Alex.
I had a cookie cake. It left a good taste in my mouth.
That's okay.
I love a good cookie cake, Sean.
Great. Terrific.
Anyway.
I thought for sure you were gonna think this was a tedious game. All right, fair enough.
No. Turns tended to go pretty fast. Maybe because we had 1-round auctions. And that particular action was pretty quick a lot of times. I don't know. I didn't find it tedious. I enjoyed both plays, genuinely.
But you never played 5.
I don't remember if my first play was 4 or 5. It might have been 5. I wouldn't recommend it at 5. Like at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it at 5.
Yeah.
Or some other player counts.
Oh boy. Theme for this one, Sean. Did you feel like an archmage collecting wizards?
No, not at all. I mean, this okay. So like, it's not actually an auction. You are expending your magical energy through the mana to compete over these wizards. It's like, no, it's an auction. No, I thought the theme was ridiculous. It was a pace it on theme. I didn't care about it at all. At all. And keep in mind, I frequently play a game called Magic.
The Gathering.
Yeah, the Gathering.
That involves mana.
It does involve mana. Yeah.
Yeah. I think thematically it's questionable. You have reagents. I've gotten all these Eye of Newts. If they have innate magical powers or abilities, is there just some mana giver out there just giving me a certain amount of magical power? And if they don't have enough newts, they're going to give me more magical power just so they can get their hands on those newts? I'd have to stretch pretty far to have that make thematic sense.
No, you're not, because it's not actually a marketplace. You're putting them into a potion or into a cauldron, and the way the ebbs and flows of the magical ley lines are, depending on the situation, is how much energy you get out of it.
Sean, I liked it. I liked this game, and that patently makes no sense.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely does. 100%. Absolutely. Depending on the time of year, depending on the season, depending on emotion. I mean, a whole number of things. You can get more magical energy out of certain things. I think that trust me, that's fine. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's all terrible, but it's fine.
This is where we differ. I will say we did have some jokes about whenever people would be short on towers, having a bunch of homeless wizards around, homeless lizard wizards, and needing to desperately get them into houses. I don't know. There were just random things that would come up that were. I think the theme added to it because it was wacky and odd, but I do think it gives folks a different sense of what this game actually is. I think this will mismatch what you would expect from a game called Lizard Wizard, broadly.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think the theme added as much as it could, broadly.
No.
So, one guild thought from Sylvain Lacroix. Sylvain Lacroix said, while this game is very, very similar to Raccoon Tycoon, I still have a hard time deciding which one I prefer. Raccoon Tycoon is simpler and uses a theme that will please people who are less into fantasy settings. Lizard, on the other hand, has a tad more things to do, is a bit more complex, but also has a stellar table presence. Both games are amazing, and I really enjoy them. However, these need to be played with a higher player count since they have auction elements. They are not at their best at 2. I will give this one a high 4, almost a low 5, but I don't give it out easily. So, Sylvain, more in my ballpark with this one than yours. I don't know if I'd agree with the higher player counts. I would think 6 would be a nightmare, but anyway, speculative at this point.
Sure.
Sean, is it a 2 or 3 from you?
It's a 2. It's a
okay.
2. I have zero desire to ever play this game again. So we rate everything here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. 1, poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. 6, an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. A 2, we call game has some merit, but has significant issues. And there's always, and recently, not recently, probably the last like 3 or 4 years, we've kind of said, well, if you don't want to play this game again, like super hard pass, then it's probably a 2. Just for comparison, a 3 Game is okay, not exciting while playing the right situation. And I think that's what it is, right? Like, if you refuse to play this in the quote unquote right situation, then it should be a 2. I have zero desire to play this game. I found it tedious. There weren't, while I saw synergies and while I saw that there are some different strategies and different things that you can focus on, I just didn't find them particularly clever. And I just didn't enjoy this game. Sometimes I'll be going through a rule book, or I'll be getting taught a game, and in the middle of that teach or that read, I'm like, this game I am really gonna dig. The reverse isn't true. I don't think there are a lot of times that I'll sit through a teach or a read and be like, oh, I'm not gonna like this game at all. I don't think that really happens all that often. And so I sat through Dan's video. I'm like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. But by the time we were doing it, by the time I was playing it, I was just like, no, this is not for me.
Okay. Sean, I'm much higher on this one. I just had a better experience. I think I'd have a hard time.
Is this going to be a 2-5 split?
Not quite that far.
Okay. All right.
I would say closer to good than great.
Okay.
Some of what holds it back from being a great game would be rulebook choppiness, some unclear language, some small component things, and some tedious elements of play. I agree with you that some of the actions are very fiddly and quite frankly tedious. I didn't even mention this, but for instance, tracking how much you can store and then actually making sure you have the right number of tokens to store can be a tedious piece of this. The game has tedious elements, but in my mind, it does have a lot of those really interesting synergies. It has emergent play, different paths to victory. I've seen it. And it clicked well in my brain. I did well in playing it. I was able to manipulate the market and time things well and find cool little twists on play. The flexibility you get in the familiars, great. But keep in mind, this is based on playing it with several wrong rules. So I think ultimately the best place for this to settle at is a 4. A good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Dutchie. I think it'll probably be there a year from now, but maybe it'll be in the 3 category. It'll slip. I will say this, Sean. I think it's unlikely I will play this with Abby. She, I think, would enjoy the core game, but because there's an advantage that emerges from if you've played this game before and understand the system and the possibilities of the spell deck and how familiars and some of the economy of this game, if you've played that a couple of times, someone who's new to this, I think, is going to more likely than not get just stomped in their first play of this in comparison. It's one of those games where there's a distinct advantage with experience. And Abby doesn't like that when that happens. And she doesn't like longer games, and this does tend to be a little on the longer side. So a 4, I think I'm solid there. A good game worth playing, just not all the time. So a 2-4 split, which is still 2 points difference is significant, Sean.
That's significant, yeah.
Yeah. So that's Lizard Wizard. Sean, unleashing the 2 on this game. I'm giving this one a solid 4. It's Lizard Wizard.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out Dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, Sean, Duke's Double Take, looking back at episode 246, back on track, where we reviewed Renature. Sean, at the time, you gave Renature a solid 3. You said it could go up if you played this at a higher player count, but you didn't. You didn't think it played that great at 2, and so you gave it a big quarantine caveat. I gave this one a 4. I said the core game here could be great rather than good, but I found the setup time not worth it for what you get, and it didn't really thrive as a game at 2. Sean, because I had to refresh my own memory on this one, this is a capstone game. This is one, Michael Kiesling, I believe, is one of the designers. Yep, Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer.
Yeah.
So a solid design team. Dennis Lohausen art. So all of the kind of core essentials. It's a domino area control game would be the best way to kind of frame this. Meaner than you would expect from looking at the art and some of the other elements of this. And at higher player counts, dynamic and pretty interesting. And Sean, I will agree with you on this. Utterly forgettable. Barely remembered it. Had to have a complete refresher when this came up. So
Yeah, I have zero desire to play this again. It wasn't that it was bad, but it just seemed kind of forgettable. Keep in mind, Keesley and Kramer, incredible design team, a ton of fantastic games. But no, I'm looking at the board and no, thank you.
Yeah. I mean,
oh yeah. There's the wild animal changes, and you can change it to left or right.
Yep. You have the different sizes of things for area control purposes. You can invest in larger things or smaller things.
I think it's well designed. I think it's a clever game, but just the whole package together it doesn't do a lot for me. I don't think I'm going to drop it to a 2. I don't think I would refuse to play this, but I certainly wouldn't be strongly inclined to play this. I'd play this before I played, what's the other one we just talked about?
Lizard Wizard? Already? Oh, wow. That's a record for fastest to forget a game. Man.
I'm not even joking. But no, I mean, I'm going to keep this at a 3. I mean, it's certainly a lower 3. Game is okay. Not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. I mean, it's got to be perfect situation.
I think you would like this at a higher player count.
I might.
I just don't know when you would ever play it at a higher player count.
No.
I think you would like it, though.
All right.
Genuinely, having played it at a higher player count, you'd like that territorial area control. It allows you to be clever. It does some cool things.
Yeah.
And in remembering that and just talking it out, I was inclined to maybe drop it to a 3, but I'll keep it right there at a 4. I haven't gotten rid of it yet. It's a good game worth playing, just not all the time. Belongs in the Duchy. It is more situational, though. It's not one of those that plays great at 2. And so, because you need more players, I mean, take your pick. But there's some clever stuff going on in this one. And again, meaner than you would expect for the theme and the look of the game. So, that's Renature. Pretty quick double take. The Guild didn't have any thoughts on this one.
Woof.
So, stays at a 3 for Sean, stays at a 4 for me. All right, Sean, before we wrap it up, the best of the rest, the names we did not pick, but we could have. And I will say, the Guild is mirroring you in your lack of enthusiasm this week for both of these games, and it reflected in the quantity of name selections. Maybe not the quality, but the quantity at least. Matthew S. suggested Cayman, Shaman more, or Eco-Reclaimin. Cayman, Shaman, Eco-Reclaimin? Okay. Referring to shaman as in kind of wizardy types and I guess some mystical, magical elements. Cayman, referring to lizards, and Eco-Reclaimin, referring to Renature, the theme of the game Renature.
And then Joshi and Gurr tried a one-name title suggestion, Green. Lizards are green, and then there's the eco-friendly nature of Renature, or green. So there you go. Good job, Josh.
Pretty clever. The name Father Steve O'Rourke with Enchanting Planting, referring to the magic of Lizard Wizard and the planting of Renature.
And then Alex Bistecki and Phil Speck, there's a bit of an assist here, right? One person referenced the song, then the other,
right.
And then I think it was Phil that came in with the actual title. Tree Wizard, and really, Alex, you have to talk about, this is more of an Alex reference than anything else.
It's from the show Taskmaster from Season 1. Romesh Ranganathan, on a task where they had to do stuff in reverse, did a ridiculous reverse thing where he was unpopping balloons in reverse and then jumping up into a tree. There's a silly, catchy song that goes along with it. It's a funny sketch. It's a funny show. It comes from Taskmaster is that suggestion, and pretty good.
You and I are two different people, Alex. You can just start talking about, past episodes of Taskmaster. Whereas last night I was explaining to Raquel the plots of Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 in great detail. And I was constantly telling her, like, hey, please stop me, because I'm sure this is boring. She's like, no, keep going. I'm like, are you sure? Because, like, I find this fascinating, but this sounds really boring. Anyway, we have similar skill sets, but in different
Domains.
practice areas. Yeah. There you go.
Yes. Yeah. Our practices don't overlap.
No.
No. All right. And finally, BJ from Board Game Gumbo with Tragic Magic, which, based on the scores being provided, and someone hinted at this on the guild, I mean, it's pretty fitting.
That was me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It wasn't your alter ego. It was
No,
outright
it was
you.
actually me. Yeah, I'm like, oh, is this a called shot at our potential reviews for the game? So,
it turned out to be accurate for you anyway.
It was incredibly tragic for me.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it, Sean. I'm gonna see you 7 days from recording this, or 8 days, one of those two numbers.
In theory, less than 7 days. In theory.
But in practice, we'll find out.
Yes, indeed. All right, well, that's going to do it then for episode 271. Thanks again to Phil Speck for Reagents of Change. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on March 25th, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the Dice in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. You can find out all their cool stuff on their website, GameToppersLLC.com. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a game topper. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.